Hey friends, welcome back to Guess What? Compliance Can Be Simple. I'm your host, Dr. Natasha Guess, founder of Guess Compliance Consultant LLC, where I work with small and mid-sized healthcare companies or practices to build compliance systems that actually function in real operational environments. Now, today we are going deep on something that does not get talked about enough: access. Specifically, what happens when someone accesses a patient record they had no documented business reason to access. They were curious, they just wanted to check something, and that decision became a compliance event. Let me set the scene. A team member is supporting a client practice with onboarding or workflow troubleshooting. They open a patient record to verify information. There is absolutely no documented task tied to that specific file, but the system automatically locks the access. Later on, the practice receives a patient inquiry about who has accessed their records. The access event surfaces, and now the organization must answer one question: why was this record accessed? We were just checking something is not a compliance answer. We were curious about something is not a compliance answer. It may be an explanation, but in a regulatory context, those are two very different things. And this actually starts with minimum necessary. HIPAA requires that access be limited to what is actually required to perform a specific assigned duty. Not what might be helpful, not what saves time. What is required? And I know that in small teams, this gets eroded quickly. Someone needs help, permissions expand informally, the access granted for a temporary purpose becomes permanent because nobody revisited it, and then your access logs capture all of it. Here is what I want you to understand. Access logs do not capture intent. They capture behavior. Regulators see who accessed what, from which device, at what time, and for how long. And good intentions do not appear in access logs. Now, let me give you the most common version of this scenario. You have a team member that is working in a system and notices a patient name they recognize. Maybe someone they know, maybe a family member, maybe their best friend. And they decide to open the record briefly, just to take a quick look. They close it and then move on. But the system logged it. 3 months later, a complaint surfaces. Now, your organization must determine whether the access was authorized, whether it constitutes a breach, whether a risk assessment is required, and whether notification obligations were triggered. All of that from one moment of curiosity. And this is not a uniquely American compliance problem. In Canada, health information custodians under FIPA in Ontario carry the same obligation. Access to personal health information must be limited to what is necessary for the purpose for which it was collected or used. The need to know principle is explicit in the legislation, and IPC enforces it actively. Now, let's talk about a case that was from August 2025. In August 2025, the IPC in Canada issued its first ever administrative monetary penalties under FIPA, and that was in Decision 298. In the case, a physician used an EHR system to search for patient records outside of his circle of care. The system logged every access, and the investigation found that the clinic had no privacy management program in place, no documented access controls, and no policies governing how staff were expected to handle personal health information. The IPC was direct about this. The failure to establish a privacy management program before the clinic began operating was a significant factor in the decision to impose the penalty. Now, the audit log captured the behavior. The absence of a system is what made the organization indefensible. The lesson is the same on both sides of the border. Access logs are not a reactive tool. They only function as protection when the organization has already built the access controls, when you have role definitions, and when monitoring processes are there that give the law context and meaning. The organizations that navigate this with the least damage are the ones that had systems in place before any of this happened. They had role-based access, which was clearly defined. Their access logs were actively monitored, and they had an escalation process ready to activate. Curiosity is never a justification. Helplessness is not authorization, and good intentions do not appear in access logs. Now, take a moment and ask yourself, do we have role-based access for every member of our team? Do we have processes in place for when someone accesses a record that does not have a business justification? How are we handling these types of issues? Think about those questions. It will help your practice to know the specific answer. In the next episode, we will be going deeper and we'll focus on informal communication. We'll talk about what happens when a personal device becomes a compliance event and why the text message that felt like a time saver can trigger a breach investigation. I am Dr. Natasha Guess. Thank you for listening to Guess What? Compliance can be simple. I will be seeing you in the next episode. Until then, keep it simple, stay compliant, and protect your patients.